You are listening to The Tarot Diagnosis. I'm your host, Shannon. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, and I also happen to have a love for tarot. Each episode, I invite you to reflect with me as I work to demystify the tarot and the human experience, all while exploring tarot's connection to mental and emotional health. While this podcast may feel therapeutic, it is not meant to take the place of psychotherapy. So grab your cards and join me as I work to create a pathway to better understand ourselves and those around us. I'm excited for the last episode of 2025 to be in the form of a collective reading. I've decided to pull cards based on my yearly New Year's spread that I share each year, but this reading will be for all of us. So if you receive my emails, then you already have a copy of the spread in your inbox with this episode announcement, but I'll also be sharing a copy of the spread to Instagram, so keep an eye out for that. But yeah, the spread is a 7-card spread, and it includes an anchor card in the center, which normally I would recommend calculating your personal year card, so the year that's coming up, which you would do by adding your birth month, day, and current year. But since this is a collective reading, I'll just be using the 2026 collective year card as the anchor, which is the Wheel of Fortune. The Wheel of Fortune is all about change, time, shifts, luck, lack of luck. Things are kind of like moving whether we're ready for them to move or not. And unlike the Hermit year that we are moving out of, which was 2025, where we were asked to kind of slow down and go inward, in 2026, we're kind of using what we learned in the Hermit year in order to step back into kind of this spinning wheel, then back into life, really. And the Wheel of Fortune reminds us that we can't control everything, but we can choose how we respond to the things that happen to us, especially when things feel really uncertain or unpredictable, which tends to spike anxiety and reactivity. And I think it's important to remember that, the Wheel of Fortune isn't always going to be an easy ride. But there will be growth and there will be just as many ups as there are downs. There's going to be, surprises, moments that require us to be very adaptable, and also stay flexible. And I think the real work of the Wheel of Fortune and this year is learning how to find a steady center inside all of that motion instead of being, flung around and, gripping for dear life at the edges of the wheel. So that's our anchor, which we will be referencing again, kind of throughout the spread, which you'll see kind of how the spread goes. But there's a few cards that we'll pull that reference the anchor card. So that's why it's important to be able to do that calculation for yourself if you want to personalize the spread even further for you. Oh, and for this spread, I will be using my Tarot Vintage deck per usual. It's kind of just what I've been leaning towards as of late, even though I was gifted some lovely new decks for the holiday season, one of which I will be showcasing on Instagram soon, so check that out. But yeah, I don't know. I always go back to this deck. I think everybody has that one deck that just feels like an extension of themselves. And it's still really fun to use some other decks because I feel like new insight comes out and the imagery obviously is different and brings different ideas and thoughts and emotions to the surface. But yeah, I'm just going back to Tarot Vintage. All right. So, and if you want to see a photo of this spread, check your email inbox. I included a picture of what the spread looks like so you can see the imagery of the cards. Also, of course, we'll post a photo to Instagram so you can see it there. So card 1 is going to be something to be proud of from 2025. Oh, and also before I get started, I had mentioned the anchor card. So that is the first card that will be placed in the center of the spread. And then we're going to be working from left to right. So when you see the layout of the spread, it'll make a little bit more sense. So I have the Wheel of Fortune laid out here in front of me as the anchor in the center of the spread. And the first card I'm going to be pulling is something for us to be proud of from 2025. So we're going to be doing a little bit of a look back right now. So something to be proud of from 2025. Okay. Oh, interesting. 4 of Cups. Not what I would have expected to see for something to be proud of. It's not the first card that comes to mind when I think of pride. I think especially because we so often frame this card as a card of apathy, disengagement, stubbornness. And I think this card can stump a lot of folks. And honestly, though, it might actually be one of the most versatile cards in the deck. And in this case, I think this is where its versatility comes in. I think it makes sense to interpret it through the lens of emotional discernment. It is a Cups card after all. And then looking at it through a lens of emotional discernment versus stubbornness or indifference gives us that flexibility, and I think adds more depth to the card, because then it's about learning what was actually worth our emotional energy. So maybe we started noticing when we were people pleasing or choosing others over ourselves. And, with the Four of Cups in the position of pride, it really points to maybe realizing that not everything we are offered, either by other people, circumstance, or our own desires or fantasies, is actually worth receiving. Sometimes it might deplete us more than we think it will nurture us or give to us. And I think understanding that is the foundation of emotional discernment and growth. So, if you spent 2025 really trying to look at, am I just saying yes because I feel like I have to say yes, and everything that's handed to me or put in front of me, I have to accept and I have to receive. And then maybe you realized, oh, this actually isn't for the best of me. Then the Four of Cups in this position would absolutely make sense. All right, let's move on to card 2. So card 2 is something to explore or continue exploring in the new year. So this could be something that maybe you've already been working on and you need to extend into the new year, or something that you haven't considered that you should. Ooh, Two of Wands. Okay. So the Two of Wands, this is like probably, aside from the the Queen of Swords, the Two of Wands is probably my favorite card in the entire deck. It's a card of intention, inspiration, possibility, creativity. It's full of potential. It's like that feeling you get when you have that kind of first initial spark of an idea or a vision or a plan for an adventure. I mean, it follows the Ace of Wands. So it's that experience directly after that spark is ignited, where your brain is like scanning everything for, possible next steps. It's a very exciting card. So as far as something to continue to explore in 2026, I think this card is suggesting that it's time to get curious. Step to those kind of like outer edges of your comfort zone. So in therapy, we talk about the window of tolerance, and we talk about our comfort zone, our stretch zone, and our panic zones. And this Two of Wands feels so much like stepping to the edge of that comfort zone and assessing what's just beyond that threshold. So, perhaps 2026 is about you exploring your stretch zone, that space just outside of the boundaries of your comfort zone, but not in a way that's going to cause panic or wreak havoc on your nervous system. And actually, speaking of nervous system, from a nervous system perspective, the Two of Wands kind of makes me think about the power of peripheral vision and looking off into the horizon. So from an evolutionary standpoint, we would be scanning for danger pretty regularly from elevated spaces to see if any threats were headed our way, if, there was anything kind of like invading our space or getting ready to invade our space, so that we could be prepared. And when it was clear, when we were looking out into the horizon, off into the distance, our nervous system could be calm. And today, it's rare that any of us are actually taking the time to step into this energy of the two of Wands and really kind of look off into the distance, look off into our peripheral, off into the horizon. We are so zoned into our phones, our tablets, our computers, whatever is directly in front of us. So I think this is also kind of a nudge for what to explore in the new year, is to maybe start regulating our nervous systems a little bit. And this Two of Wands is a great visual representation on how to easily do that. In fact, I do this pretty regularly throughout the day, just because so much of my job, I have to be so like tuned in and zoned in on another human in front of me. So throughout the day, I make sure I step, anytime I have like 5-10 minutes, I step out into the yard and the garden. I give my nervous system a break. I scan from one end of the yard to the other. I look at the sky. I scan from one end of the sky to the other. And I also do this on my daily walks. I'm, lucky to have, some really nice nature preserve areas near me. And I'm making sure that I'm constantly like scanning and giving my nervous system that break to take everything in and not be so just like hyper focused on my dog or where, the steps in front of me. So yeah, great reminder for all of us to do more of this in 2026. All right, let's move on to card 3. So card 3 is going to be a lesson from our anchor card. So remember, our anchor card for 2026 is the Wheel of Fortune. So this card is going to help us define a lesson that we should be considering or learning from the Wheel of Fortune. Right, the Four of Swords. So, oh man, I feel like I'm going to continue talking about the nervous system now. So the Four of Swords really kind of feels like the Wheel of Fortune's nervous system companion, because sometimes you need to tune out in order to fully tune in. And I feel like that's what the Four of Swords is saying. I spoke about this card in an episode where I talked about blocked vision and how in the Four of Swords, the eyes are closed really because we're making this conscious choice to stop looking, seeing, or experiencing. It's this deliberate pullback. We're taking a break from stimulation. We're giving ourselves kind of this like sensory timeout. And from a nervous system perspective, it's really important for regulation, emotional regulation, and just like nervous system regulation to sometimes have a narrowing of input. And so closing the eyes, not doing any sort of engagement is kind of like repairing our bodies. And it's also important to remember we can't always process what we've experienced if we're still continuing to take in more of that experience or just more of other things. So as a lesson from the Wheel of Fortune, it seems as though the Four of Swords is maybe saying you don't need to be meeting this constant change by staying constantly engaged or constantly on high alert, because we know that the wheel is going to keep spinning. So, when life is moving really fast and this wheel keeps turning, we don't have to be the hamster on the wheel. It's okay to know when to maybe step back. And, I talk about finding, especially in my Wheel of Fortune journal, how important it is to find the center of the wheel. And I think that the Four of Swords is a nod to that. Again, reducing input, reducing stimulation, giving our nervous system a chance to catch up and kind of already make meaning of what has happened. So, the wheel brings us, constant movement, and the Four of Swords shows us how we're able to survive that constant motion without crashing out. All right, let's move on to card 4. So card 4 is going to be energy that we should be bringing into 2026. So energy to bring into the new year. Right, our first reversal. Five of Pentacles reversed. So we know upright, traditionally, the Five of Pentacles typically, makes us feel or think about themes of being excluded, scarcity, feeling like maybe you don't belong, and the pain and the discomfort of that. And, reversed almost feels more of like taking liberation into our own hands. So opting out of spaces that maybe actually aren't good for us, or choosing to stop seeking those spaces out. So this is more of like, hey, let's actually take a look at where we're trying to fit in. I think that the Five of Pentacles reversed could also be about releasing like FOMO, like fear of missing out, not just socially, but also like spiritually or creatively. I think this card is asking us to notice where we've been maybe hanging out at closed doors instead of kind of like building our own door, or building our own shelter. So yeah, I think this card really kind of feels like, hey, stop chasing validations from, systems or groups or people or relationships that don't actually value you or even see you. Because once you start doing that, more fulfilling opportunities for connection and true authentic care actually end up showing up. So Yeah. Time to stop chasing closed doors. All right, let's move on to card 5. So card 5 is going to be a negative thought to release as we embark on a new year. All right, so a negative thought to release is another reversal. The Hanged Man reversed. So this one's interesting. I think reverse the Hangman really speaks to like cognitive loops and negative cognitive, kind of thinking traps. And for this one, gosh, it kind of makes me think about like waiting around too long for like an answer or for clarity before you act or make a decision, or feeling like you just don't have the right or correct or enough amount of insight. It's kind of like, I've been around people who say, oh, if I just wait long enough, then it will all make sense. So I just need to wait a little bit longer, a little bit longer, a little bit longer. And I think sometimes waiting, prolonging, that type of, it's a form of resistance, but it's also a form of avoidance. And I think it's avoidance that we can disguise as patience. And in that way, it becomes maladaptive. So I think that we have to be careful with, how we're interacting with our own level of suspension in terms of like hanged man energy. Because I think the hanged man too, and again, this is in a reverse position, could also be about like over intellectualizing. There could be some spiritual bypassing here. Like, oh, I have to wait until I receive a message, or I have to wait until I, feel something. And, especially as someone who comes to the tarot from a therapeutic and psychological lens, I'm constantly kind of like straddling this line between these two worlds. And I'm always telling people to be cautious to not give up their autonomy and not give up their own power by saying I have to wait for something to tell me what to do or what to be or how to think or how to feel or whatever it is. I think that could also be a way to maybe even like use self-reflection or self-work as a way to even delay changing behavior or changing your life or the way you think or, just working on yourself. So this is a really interesting card. And I think it brings up some thoughts that I know that I struggle with, being at the intersection of these two very unique worlds. So yeah, I think if you've already done the work, you don't always need to be hanging out in the suspension period continuously. And honestly, it kind of feels like a nod to that 4 of Swords that we pulled earlier, where it's like, let insights marinate, but in a way that helps repair the nervous system, not in a way that it's avoiding. All right. That was a good one. I'm going to have to sit with that one for a little bit longer too, because I feel like there's some good stuff there. All right, let's move on to card 6. So card 6 is an affirmation for 2026. And actually, this is our final card of the spread. So an affirmation to carry us through the new year. Oh my God. The strength card. Okay. So strength is like my least favorite card these days. It's one of those cards that makes me roll my eyes whenever I pull it. I feel like it's so cliche. It kind of just annoys me. So yeah, I have been trying to spend a little bit more time with it to deepen my relationship and not be so kind of like emotionally activated by it. But, when I do pull this card, I tend to focus on the lion. And actually, a few cards I've pulled today reminded me of this episode. So back to, I spoke about this earlier too, an episode that I did on blocked vision in the tarot. I actually included the strength card which I know confused some people, but it's because the way the figure's hands are placed that make it look like they're kind of like closing one of the eyes of the tiger or the lion. And, while the other hand is either kind of like opening or closing the mouth, depending on, whatever you're projecting onto the card at the moment. But, covering one eye, they reduce the lion's reactivity without completely stripping it of its agency altogether. So they're managing the arousal and activation by limiting the amount of input that, this lion is experiencing. And in therapy, this is like super similar to titration. So we're not exposing the nervous system to 100% of a threat that we're trying to reduce activation to. We're dosing it, in increments, similar to like what we would call systemic desensitization. And so in this case, the lion's instinct is still present, but its perception is maybe softened a bit. So it can see enough to not feel totally trapped, but not enough to become overly provoked. In fact, it always kind of reminds me of alligator wranglers. Like I grew up in Florida, so like see alligator wranglers all the time. They have to like throw something over the eyes of the gator in order to close the eyes because it limits their kind of this instinctual primal drive to react and attack. So I think that's kind of what's happening in the strength card. So with all of that said, I think a collective affirmation in the form of strength for 2026 might be something like, I will move at a pace my nervous system can handle. That seems to be the theme of what at least I'm projecting on the cards for this reading, like nervous system work. So yeah, I will move at a pace my nervous system can handle. And if you're feeling kind of extra witchy or like a therapeutic ritual to combine with this affirmation, I would recommend creating a sigil. This is something I do with my pools all the time. I pull a weekly card and I write an affirmation to attach to the card, and then I create a sigil. And you can kind of hold on to that sigil throughout the year, keep it on your desk, right, your altar. I'm going to create one now that I've pulled this, and I'll include it in the email that goes out so you all can kind of see what sigil I created. So, and please, if you end up creating a sigil or you come up with your own affirmation for this card, or you pull this spread for yourself with your own anchor card, your personal 2026 card, I would love to hear what you got and see the sigils that you all create. So I hope that this collective reading was valuable for all of you. I also really just want to take a moment to say thank you. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Thank you for following me on Instagram. Thank you for purchasing my latest book, Dark Shadow, Golden Shadow. And thank you for just like finding value in the intersection of tarot and mental health and letting me have this little outlet where I get to be creative and connect with all of you and have fun with the cards and psychology and mental health. But, I also just like mostly want to thank you all for letting me hold space for you. I feel so incredibly lucky to be able to interact with and get to know so many of you. And you all are just like some of the most brilliant, warm, generous, creative, incredible folks. And I feel lucky to be able to interact with so many of you. So I hope 2026 is full of good health and joy and ease and lots of laughter and friendship and growth. So see you in 2026. Thank you so much for listening to The Tarot Diagnosis. For more tarot and mental health content, follow The Tarot Diagnosis on Instagram. You can also subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode and sign up to receive the Tarot Diagnosis emails where you'll have access to exclusive spreads and exciting announcements. To join an incredible community of tarot and psychology enthusiasts, join the Tarot Diagnosis membership community, The Symposium, by visiting thetarotdiagnosis.com.